In the early hours of March 2nd, 2026, news spread across the world that immediately triggered confusion and concern among governments, analysts, and the public. Iran's powerful military branch, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, released a statement claiming it had launched another wave of ballistic missiles toward Israel. According to Iranian officials, this strike represented the 10th round of attacks in an ongoing confrontation. They stated that the missiles used in the operation belonged to a system known as Kheibar Shekan, which Tehran has previously presented as one of its more capable long-range weapons. Iranian state outlets quickly amplified the announcement, describing the launch as a significant breakthrough against Israeli defenses. Officials suggested that some of the projectiles had managed to push through Israel's multi-layered air defense network, which is widely regarded as one of the most sophisticated protective systems in the world. The claims immediately captured international attention because they suggested that sensitive targets inside Israel might have been reached. Among the locations mentioned in Iranian statements were facilities connected to Israeli leadership. Some reports even referenced a site described as the office used by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Those remarks triggered a wave of urgent questions across television networks and online platforms. People around the world began asking the same thing. If those claims were accurate, where exactly was Netanyahu at the time of the attack, and had he been affected in any way? The uncertainty intensified because independent verification was not immediately available. In fast-moving military crises, information often spreads far quicker than it can be confirmed. While Iranian broadcasters continued repeating their claims about successful strikes, outside observers had very limited details about what had actually occurred on the ground. Iranian media described the missile barrage as a powerful demonstration of capability. According to their narrative, several missiles had successfully penetrated Israel's defense layers and reached strategic zones linked to government and military command. They also claimed that certain projectiles had approached facilities tied to the Israeli Air Force's operational leadership. Those statements circulated widely across the internet within minutes. Short video clips, dramatic commentary, and unverified images began appearing across social media platforms, fueling speculation about the scale of the damage. Some posts suggested that the Israeli Prime Minister himself might have been the intended target of the strike. Others speculated that Israeli leadership had already been evacuated to undisclosed locations. Despite the intensity of these rumors, major international news organizations urged caution. At that stage, there was still no neutral confirmation that Netanyahu's office had been directly hit or that Israel's top leadership had suffered any casualties. What did appear consistent across multiple sources was that Iran had launched a coordinated set of ballistic projectiles toward Israeli territory. Iranian officials framed the attack as retaliation for an earlier military campaign that had reportedly been conducted by Israel with support from the United States. That earlier operation was described by some officials as a major strike against Iranian military-linked infrastructure. Certain reports indicated that the operation targeted facilities connected to Iran's political and security leadership, including areas associated with the country's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. While details about the extent of damage inside Iran remained unclear and highly contested, Iranian authorities characterized their missile launches as a direct response to what they considered a serious escalation. As global coverage intensified, Israeli officials began releasing carefully worded statements. Instead of confirming specific damage to government buildings or addressing Netanyahu's personal safety directly, the focus of their communication remained on national defense and civilian protection. The Israel Defense Forces reported that defensive systems had been activated across the country and that interceptors were being deployed against incoming threats. Air raid sirens sounded in multiple regions, warning residents to immediately move into protected areas. Major urban centers such as Tel Aviv and Jerusalem experienced waves of emergency alerts as missiles approached Israeli airspace. Residents rushed into shelters while air defense systems worked to intercept the projectiles visible in the night sky. In many areas, flashes from interceptor missiles illuminated the skyline as defensive batteries attempted to neutralize incoming threats. Israel's defense network succeeded in destroying many of the projectiles before they could reach populated areas. However, not every missile was intercepted. Some projectiles managed to strike open terrain, while others caused localized damage in civilian districts. Emergency teams were dispatched rapidly to assess impacts, assist injured residents, and secure affected areas. Hospitals prepared for possible casualties as rescue services continued responding to reports from across the country. During situations like this, governments tend to release information cautiously. Revealing the real-time movements or locations of top national leaders during an active missile attack can create serious security risks. For that reason, Israeli officials avoided confirming exactly where the Prime Minister was located. Instead, they emphasized that Israel's leadership remained operational and that command systems were functioning normally. Officials stressed that the government and military hierarchy were continuing to coordinate the country's response to the unfolding situation. That controlled messaging strategy, however, did little to calm speculation on social media. Iranian accounts and affiliated commentators continued sharing claims suggesting that Netanyahu had been directly targeted in the attack. Several viral posts hinted that his office building had been among the sites struck by missiles. Yet independent journalists and international monitoring organizations could not verify those claims. In conflicts involving high political stakes, competing narratives often emerge as both sides attempt to influence global perception. Information warfare has become a central component of modern geopolitical confrontations. Governments frequently try to shape how events are interpreted by domestic audiences and the international community. Claims about leadership targets, strategic breakthroughs, or dramatic battlefield outcomes can quickly become part of that narrative competition. From Israel's standpoint, refusing to disclose the precise location of the Prime Minister during an active conflict fits a long-standing pattern. In times of military emergency, political leaders are often moved to protected command centers designed to allow them to continue directing national strategy without exposing them to immediate danger. Before the missile launches occurred, Netanyahu had appeared publicly several times during the preceding days. In those appearances, he expressed strong support for the earlier military action targeting Iranian facilities and warned that Israel was prepared for possible retaliation. His speeches emphasized national unity and resilience. He described Iran's missile capabilities and regional influence as major security threats and urged Israelis to remain determined in the face of rising tensions. Those statements reflected a long-standing theme in Netanyahu's political messaging. For years, he has warned that Iran's military programs represent one of the most serious dangers confronting Israel and the broader Middle East. As the missile barrage unfolded, that strategic rivalry entered a far more intense phase. The conflict was no longer limited to covert operations or proxy confrontations through allied groups. Instead, it had escalated into direct exchanges involving ballistic missiles. For Israeli civilians, the crisis felt immediate and deeply personal. Sirens repeatedly interrupted daily life as millions of people sought protection in reinforced rooms, underground shelters, and designated safe zones. Families waited anxiously for official updates while listening to explosions in the distance or watching flashes of interceptors streak across the sky. Even when missiles were successfully destroyed before impact, the constant alarms created an atmosphere of tension and uncertainty. Emergency responders worked around the clock, addressing damage reports and assisting communities affected by the strikes. Firefighters, paramedics, and security teams moved quickly between impact sites as authorities tried to restore order. As the situation developed, governments across the world began evaluating the broader implications. Countries throughout the Middle East followed events closely, aware that the confrontation could expand rapidly. Diplomatic channels among major global powers became increasingly active as leaders discussed possible responses and strategies to prevent further escalation. The involvement of the United States added an additional layer of complexity. Washington had already been associated with the earlier strikes against Iranian infrastructure, which meant that the unfolding conflict was not purely bilateral. Meanwhile, another actor entered the picture. The Lebanese militant organization Hezbollah resumed launching rockets toward northern Israeli territory, opening an additional front in an already tense regional environment. That development forced Israeli defense planners to monitor multiple directions simultaneously, stretching military resources and increasing uncertainty about what might happen next. Amid this rapidly evolving crisis, the question that initially dominated headlines, Netanyahu's exact location, gradually became less significant than the broader strategic picture. Israel's governing institutions were still functioning. Military commands continued issuing operational directives. Emergency services remained active, and official communications from the Prime Minister's office continued appearing in public briefings. Those updates indicated that Netanyahu and his advisors were still involved in decision-making processes related to national defense and crisis management. The absence of precise location details appeared to be a deliberate security measure rather than evidence of a leadership vacuum. By avoiding unnecessary disclosures, Israeli authorities could reassure the public that the government remained intact while preventing adversaries from gaining potentially useful information. The confrontation between Israel and Iran now represents one of the most serious turning points in their long and complicated rivalry. For decades, both countries have competed indirectly through intelligence operations, cyber activity, and alliances with regional groups. Direct missile exchanges between the two states, especially those involving advanced ballistic systems, represent a dramatic escalation in that conflict. Strategic analysts warn that situations like this carry significant risks of miscalculation. When high-speed weapons and real-time military responses are involved, small mistakes or misunderstandings can quickly trigger wider confrontations. The decisions made in the coming days could influence the future security landscape of the Middle East for many years. At the center of the unfolding crisis remains the reality that Israel's leadership structure continues to function. Available information suggests that Benjamin Netanyahu was neither missing nor confirmed dead after the missile barrage. Instead, the most credible assessments indicate that he remained within Israel's operational leadership network, working alongside military commanders and government officials as the country navigated one of the most serious security emergencies in its modern history. As events continue developing, facts may evolve and new details may emerge. But one thing is already clear. The confrontation has entered a dangerous new phase, and its consequences could reshape regional politics, security dynamics, and international diplomacy for a long time to come.